Hello. For those of you who don't know, my name is Isaac Beaker, and I am the discussion post leader for this discussion post on Edward Hopper's painting Chop Suey and Grant Wood's painting American Gothic. Okay, so let's begin. Edward Hopper was born in July of 1882, just north of New York City. Hopper studied art at the New York School of Art under Robert Henry, and this school emphasized realism. It is for this reason that Hopper focused on the mundane dramas taking place in unpretentious places, such as Chinese restaurants and diners. Sorry about that. Hopper was interested and concerned with general human values, and he used his art to showcase the psychological complexity of everyday life by freezing a scene from a rapidly changing America. During the time of Edward Hopper, America had been through both World War I and the Great Depression. Hopper's style was heavily influenced by these events that obviously had an effect on the people and lives and happiness of America. To reflect this, Hopper painted quite solemn scenes that reflected the mood and reality of the country at the time. He painted Chop Suey in 1929, and it became the most expensive work of pre-modern American art. It became the most expensive work of pre-war American art when it sold for over $91 million in November of 2018. Chop Suey was actually inspired by two restaurants Hopper visited in the 1920s. He found fascination and importance in the spaces where eating and drinking took place, though interestingly, none of his artwork illustrates any food or drinks on the tables. Chop Suey is a reflection of the changing role and view of American women in the latter half of the 1920s. As was discussed in the last discussion post, this was a time with very drastic change for America, specifically for women. Hopper plays with color and light as well as mood to reveal sexual and social tensions that accompanied the new public roles for men and women that went against their traditional American values. Now next, on to Grant Wood and his painting The American Gothic. American Gothic was painted in 1930. So in the 1930s, though, Grant Wood became famous in the United States as one of the leading figures in the regionalist movement. This movement was anti-modern, anti-European campaign for folklorically American art. Regionalists tended to steer away from large cities, choosing to instead depict rural America in rather unflattering ways. This movement in American art originated and identified with the Midwest rather than the more populated East Coast and California. Wood came from a small town in Iowa, maybe kind of why he joined the regionalist movement and was such a part of it. He had fondness for European art, and his style was shaped by Renaissance artists. In Grant Wood's American Gothic, which was painted in 1930, the house pictured in the background is a wood-framed house built in American Gothic or Carpenter's Gothic style. The house pictured was located in Eldon, Iowa. The style is also known as Rural Gothic, and it was developed in North America in the mid-19th century. Carpenter Gothic uses wood instead of stone sets, pointed arches, steep gables, and towers. This style can also be seen on wooden churches. The windows were often inspired by the English Gothic cathedrals. The painting also depicts a farmer holding a pitchfork with a serious, no-nonsense expression on his face. This is the first thing that jumps out to me when I look at the painting. Additionally, the farmer's wife is gazing to the side with a look of longing or suppression. While American Gothic refers to the architecture of the house, it also has associations with Edgar Allan Poe and big city prejudices against the people living in the country at the time, farmers and folks like that. Items in the painting appear to be normal at first glance, but the more you look at them, the more they become out of place. He was aiming to diffuse Depression-era anxieties and his own. Wood used his deprecating sense of humor to foreground issues of difference in the Midwestern heartland. So, my two questions for you guys are first, how do you think those viewing Edward Hopper's various watercolors and other things like that during the late 1920s and 30s felt and thought about scenes he depicted? In particular, how do you think it appealed, if at all, to women, and why? The second question, with much of the country attempting to cope and rebuild during and after the Great Depression, what importance or role do you think art had? Was art something that people were able to view and identify with, or was it merely a way for feelings and events to be documented and appreciated by people like us decades later? What iconic pictures or works of art come to mind when you think about the Great Depression? Perhaps cite a specific painting or example if you can, and maybe attach the picture in your response if that's possible. Thank you.